Welcome back to Confident You Radio and the Casa de Confidence Podcast. Today, I have Stacy Ramsey with me. And Stacy, one of the things that I am incredibly grateful that she will speak to us about is her personal journey. The one thing that she says is that as she guided her clients to find their own sobriety, one theme became clear. They did not know who they were. And the irony in this was glaringly because neither did she. So let's deep dive into this. Stacy, tell me a little bit more about that and welcome.
Hello, thank you for having me today. Well, it was one of those things. I was starting out in my therapy journey. And of course, you have to get all of your hours and all of that experience. I will say, when you work in the addictions area, there's not a whole lot you don't cover. It's not a whole lot you don't experience. And I was in the hospital setting. So I was getting people that were going through withdrawals. They were doing residential work. They were doing partial hospitalization and doing the IOP step down. So they were really in all aspects of that journey. And we worked also with families. So that was very insightful. So you kind of get the full panoramic view of how that addiction impacted the family unit, but more specifically to what really got to me was identity. I would work with families who would make statements like, if we could just get them clean, if they could just be sober, then all the problems will be. What we came to as we did the family work, what we came to as we did the individual work was one, depending on the age of the addiction process, they did not know who they were. And the family would come like they had this projection of who that person would be, and it was not. And sometimes they would get sober, if you will, and they didn't like the sober version. Right? Because we're teaching boundaries and we're teaching all of these good coping strategies that sometimes the family dynamic fosters what played into their coping of addiction. And here's the thing that I was most deeply impacted by. Addiction is this I don't know, tag word or whatever, but really it's a coping strategy, right? We all have to develop coping strategies. And when we don't, if we do something what we would say clinically is maladaptive or just a really bad choice for ourselves, we then get into addictive behaviors. Now, we highlight alcohol, drugs, pornography, gambling, all of these quote unquote bad things that maybe our culture says. But, if I am avoiding my feeling, if I'm avoiding interaction and relationship, I'm using something to the extreme, this is an addictive type behavior. So it doesn't have to be as detrimental as something like that because of the mere impact that tends to have. But what it does isolate is, who are you? Why are you coping that way?
Yeah.
What is it that you're trying to find? And as I went through life, I realized at a very young age, I was very much a people pleaser. Just from a little girl, I was an only child. My mom was single. When my dad was in the area, he traveled abroad for work oftentimes. So it was just she and I. And so I learned that if mom was okay, I was okay. So I became very much trained to be very alert, to be insightful, self-aware, build all of that. So even as I grew up into a teenager, I also practiced some of those behavior strategies. It served me well as a young girl, so it also served me well as an adolescent. So by the time I go to college and I start dating my high school sweetheart, we end up in college together, we get married, we did the church. I'm a Gen X, right? So we either marry our hometown sweetheart or we go to college, we meet someone, that kind of thing. What happens after a couple of years of dating? And I see this here even in my office. Well, after a couple of years, we just did the next step. We got married.
Right.
Nobody thinks about that.
Absolutely.
Was that what you wanted to do, or is that just typically what the expectation was?
Yeah.
But at that time, we're so young, we don't know who we are.
Yeah.
We evolve so much in the college experience, but we change as we go into finding that first adult job. What does that look like? And boy, it looks really different today than it did back in the day. But those are character building, passion setting, value setting
Mhm.
time periods that we have to pursue and actually learn to have we have to build the resolve through what we're disappointed,
Mhm.
what we think we're going to gain. What is the good sacrifice? We have to build resilience. And
Mm.
when those are not built and we continue in the pattern, which I did, is graduated, got married, and the belief systems that were set in
Right.
place on both sides of our family were you get married and you have children. And very deep belief system in my family was, why have children if you're not raising them? I
Mm.
kind of wanted to do my own thing. I had a teaching in my undergrad. I always
Mhm.
wanted to go back and get my master's. And 11 months into my marriage, I found out I was pregnant. I knew, wow, my life just took an abrupt turn.
Mhm. Yeah.
And super young, I was 23, 24, 10 days before I turned 24, I had my first child. So when you start thinking about identity, gosh,
Mhm.
what have you
Yeah.
achieved? What have you lived through to really set in motion your identity? It's just on the cusp of
Yeah.
experience.
Stacey, you're speaking my language in so many ways. I see a lot of my friends, and I was probably one of the last ones that got married. I got married when I was 29, turning 30 in a couple months. And even at that, I think I still did a lot of growing up, and my first marriage ended in divorce. But many of my friends that married young, right? Out of high school into or out of college, they went through some of the very similar things in which they never really discovered who they are, what they do. And what I'm seeing now is that as women in midlife, maybe there's a chapter ending as far as maybe a child, going off to college, or they are getting ready to do an early retirement. And they don't know who they are. They don't know what they like to do. Their opinions are really based on, well, I think my husband and I believe this or think that way. And their identity is really not necessarily their own. And I I can't help but to think that we we never really gave ourselves the path because we didn't see that before. um, what are some things that you wish, and what are the things that you are doing now to help individuals that you work with, right? To find their identity, and what are things that maybe for the person that it's starting out, right? Because I'm not saying don't get married young. I'm just saying know who you are and or explore at every part of the journey who you are. Because putting yourself first is going to be one of the best gifts that you give yourself.
Absolutely is. And what I have really been passionate about, and it's been such a journey of exploring belief systems. What
Yeah.
do I believe? Like, we grew
Mm.
up, some of us on a religious term, well, I grew up Catholic, or I grew up
Yep.
this, or I got, well, what was it? Your choice? Did it align?
Mhm.
And that's an easy way around religion to do that. But so many of the things that we do and say and how we forge
Mhm.
our life around us is really our small decisions are directly uh,
Yeah.
outside of that belief system. Well, I
Mhm.
believe this, so I will do that.
Yeah.
And did we ever go back and reevaluate that? I think the thing when it started to show itself the most in the work that I do with individuals is I would hear people say, I want to do this, but I always seem to have this pattern of doing this.
Mm.
What is this about? So then I started doing some digging and really starting putting together, maybe you think you want this
Right.
and you're subscribing to this belief system, but is it yours, or is that something that when you grew up, this is what
Yeah.
our family represents, this is what our family
Yeah.
does? And hey, that is great. I raised 3 kids. They were 4 years. In 4 years I had 3 kiddos, so I get
Mhm.
that.
Yeah.
There was a generalized way we conducted our family.
Mhm.
Cool. However, as kids become young adolescents and young adults, there
Mhm.
has to be space for that to grow. And man, that makes it a little harder to parent because now you have to separate. You can believe something different, but if
Hmm.
there's boundaries that need to be set in place, we need to be able to articulate and have mutual respect for one another to say, hey, I can appreciate that this is something that you're buying into,
Hmm.
but under my roof, under my protection, under my financial support,
Right.
I'm going to ask that you adhere to these principles, what you do in your own time
Right.
outside of my home on your own dollar. I get it. This is
Hmm.
yours. And really communicate it in that way, because in that way, I am no longer telling you and dictating to you who you
Yes.
are, what you believe. And it really fosters that experimentation of exploring, well, why do I believe?
Yeah. I love that.
Why would I do that? So, what is really interesting about this, when I started to peel back the layers of our belief systems, is when I was doing a lot of focus on midlife women, what I find, just as you said, some of us started the journey in having families, some of us didn't have families. However, at about 25 years in, that puts us somewhere in that 46 to 55 range.
Right.
Either we've topped out the career, we're
Hmm.
burned out in that career, we want something to, or we chose the career because it was safe and lucrative, because we didn't want to get married, we wanted to
Yeah.
be single, we had to support ourselves.
Hmm.
We didn't have children. We don't relate to our friends anymore because they have children and they're doing it. I mean, there's
Yeah.
so many complexities.
Yeah.
Here becomes the caveat that really got me excited. I also deal with kiddos in my private practice, 14 and older, but I do a lot of older high school females, particularly. I have some men, but college girls. And guess what I
Mm.
realized? A lot of their, even some very strong families, guess who's influencing them? Guess who's giving them all their insight as they launch? Their
Hmm.
midlife moms
Yeah.
that never had a chance and are struggling themselves. And so it's been an exciting thing to see, yes, this is midlife, but really it's a principle. It's a principle of how do we foster a new way of thinking. And so I've started using language around when I deal with couples, even in identity. It's not focused in that, it's not encapsulated in that. But how do you prepare each of your children to launch well? Because if
Yeah.
I'm doing my own identity and then I identify my child as autonomous,
Mhm.
then we are each in that journey to find ourselves and grow, and there's space to evolve instead of getting stuck.
I totally yes to everything that you said, because I think that I see that again with my girlfriends. I think that they know that they can define the next chapter for their daughters, for the ones that are coming after it. And that's one of the reasons that I feel so strongly in what I'm doing, and really standing in my own power, defining and really redefining every step of the way. Who am I? What is that? What are this mean? What do I believe? Do I believe that? Why? And I would say my first marriage, that's probably one of the biggest gifts that I walked away from that relationship. That was the first time. I grew up Catholic, and my ex-husband is Jewish, and he was the first person who said, "Why do you believe that?" And I thought, huh, interesting. Not to say that I don't believe some of the things that I grew up believing, but I really had to do some of the work and say, is that something that I believe because it was somebody else's belief passed on to me? And it's okay if that's the case, but now it's my job to say, yes, I believe that, not just because it was what I'm supposed to do, but it is because I've done the work. I've wondered, I've asked the questions, and that's where many of us women, because there might be other areas, right? I don't get it perfect anywhere in one area, and then in all other areas. I do the work constantly. But I think that in what happens is, if we accept in one area and just go with the flow, then that's where the people pleasing begins. And then we end up doing it in all different areas because we're not taught to question. We're not taught to think, hey, is that real? Am I thinking the right thing? Is that belief serving me? Is it not? What am I making it mean? All of these questions are questions that at times take us out of our comfort zone
Yeah.
and make us uncertain. So it's much easier for us to avoid them and just go with the flow.
The people pleasing piggybacks on
Mhm.
perfection, piggybacks on procrastination because I'm not certain. That's what I love about the identity. And a program that I've put together really works on how do I create a scaffolding that is
Mhm.
not about my feelings.
Yeah.
Like we identify feelings, we embrace them. Hey, I'm all about feelings. Let's talk about feelings all day long. Don't ask me to do math, but we can do
Mhm.
feelings. I can tell you how I feel about math. Don't
Yep.
ask me to do math, right?
Yeah.
But to put it in a place that is structured in a way we can
Mhm.
trust it,
Yeah.
I can own my feeling. I don't have to judge it. And I can create a filter, a way that I show up in the world that consistently I know how to get there. And so then when we
Mm.
have these engagements in relationships, and sometimes we have toxic relationships, especially when we get in that schema of people pleasing, right?
Mhm.
We are trying to please a lot of people and they're using us to self-regulate.
Yeah.
And so when I start to self-regulate and when I show up in the world that I feel really good about, I feel really confident about, I don't second guess myself, I can then clearly have a vision of, oh, this is about you. I didn't show up in
Yeah.
your world the way you needed me to. So you're
Mhm.
upset about that. And I feel
Uh,
for you that you're disappointed. But quite
yeah.
frankly, I feel really confident in what I made, in the decision that I made for me, because it was a healthy decision for me to make.
Yeah.
The clarity starts to come in when people start accusing you of being selfish or self indulgent or any number when they know where to push my buttons, right? All of a
Mhm.
sudden I'm like, no, I'm really not. Why? Because I have this whole system where I go, did I show up like this? Yes. Did I show up like
Mhm.
this? Yes. But I was very purposeful in how I got to my answer, how I reached my solution. I didn't have this knee jerk emotional reaction.
Yeah.
So it builds the confidence to be able to trust myself again.
Yeah, and that confidence is a lot of what we're missing, especially in the people pleasing. One of the things that you said in the very beginning that I kind of want to go back to, and it's not just the behaviors of over drinking or overeating, and in these, gambling, whatever the addictive behavior is, but there's other behaviors that we adopt because they make it easy for us to procrastinate, make it easy for us to not have to see the uncomfortable. I have a client who every time, as a business coach, right? She's got very specific things that she should be working on, things that keep her on track, that are building her business. But anytime that she hits an uncomfortable patch, and by the way, it's very easy for all of us, and I've been there, right? But every time she hits an uncomfortable patch, she's going to get on a plane and go somewhere else. And oh, I have to attend this conference. And the question is that serving you? Is that moving you in the direction that you want? Will that investment pay off for what your goals, the vision that you have for your life is? And that's what a lot of people don't realize, that many of the behaviors we have are the ones that keep us from seeing the things that we're afraid to see, or to do the things that we know we have to do. And we
Run,
fall
we
back into
hide,
that.
we run, we hide, and we avoid it. And that goes back to the piggybacking of how much of how much time have we had as high schoolers and
Mhm.
college students to build resilience? That's what she's talking about.
Yeah.
She doesn't have the resilience to sit in the struggle
Mhm.
and be uncomfortable. I deal with a great deal of anxiety. And when we hit COVID, there were times I was seeing 40 clients a week. That's
Wow.
40 hours of seeing people face to face
Oh my
because we were
God.
in crisis.
Yeah.
And this was where, too, I was still having to refine my own identity because, I was single now and the
Mhm.
world is in trouble. I have no one, I have no young children.
Right.
My family that lived in my home were adults. They weren't relying on me. We were all independent and I could do this. And
Mhm.
yet it took a colleague who really pushed me, that had known me for years and years, had said, that's great. And you do a good job with these people. And I'm sure you are offering a lot of relief in what you're doing. People need to. I was doing it face to face,
Mhm.
virtual. She said, but are you able to give client number 10 in that day
Mhm.
same attention you gave client.
Oh,
And if client number one is starting at 6:30 or 7 in the morning to accommodate them, and client number 10 is 8 or 9 at night, what's serving
yeah.
you well? Like,
Yeah.
how do you do that?
Stacey, I wish, or perhaps maybe you were sort of eavesdropping in my earlier appointment where I recorded with Emma O'Brien, and this is exactly what we talked about. That, and again, overachiever, type A, I will fill my calendar because I want to do it all, right? But I am really not showing up either for myself, for my husband, or for my clients in the way that I need to if I'm filling my calendar. And it's interesting. In the last 2 weeks, I've been really rescheduling people, really creating a larger margin for myself to take a break, to walk outside, to not start at the beginning, super early and super late. Why? Because it doesn't define me as a better person, a better coach, a better interviewer. If I am showing up for back to back to back appointments, I need to learn how to create that margin. And for many of us, again, we we think that that's the right thing to do.
Oh,
We
when we love what we do, we get
Yeah,
caught up in the
yeah.
passion of it.
Hmm.
I moved practices about almost 2.5 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, 3 years. It's in March, but I've lost count of which one it was. It was somewhere in COVID, right?
Right.
And who I work for now, I've known for almost a decade. And she knew me where I worked before, and she knew my schedule. And she said, listen, you have a plan that you can work here and make it through this month and cover your bills. Can I have your schedule for 1 month? 1 month, friend. And if you don't like it and it doesn't serve you well, you do
Mhm.
whatever you want with it. She
Okay.
had me starting at 9 o'clock in the morning. I got a lunch break at 1 o'clock, and we coordinated it with her so we can
Mhm.
staff, but I can also have human interaction
Right.
instead of just work interaction.
Mhm.
And then she said, by 6 p.m., we're walking out the door. Like,
Yeah.
you need to, for the, I was a brand new person. My children are older, so and
Mhm.
I'm very close with my oldest daughter. I'm close with all my kids, but she has the closest day to day contact with me.
Mhm.
She goes, Mom, I've been telling you you couldn't work like that for years. Why didn't you listen to me?
Yeah. Amazing.
Because she had been. I'd go home and I'd sleep, and that's great. And I'd get up and I'd do what I did,
Mhm.
and I loved it. But this was like, now we go hiking. We
Nice.
plan Saturdays at the farmer's market, and it enriches me, and it's
Mhm.
wonderful. And
Yeah.
it makes me so much better for myself first.
Mhm.
And I know that's an overflow because I've had clients that I have seen on and off for years, and they're like, you are a totally different person than when I met you
Yeah.
4 or 5 years ago. It makes a difference.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that, for entrepreneurs and for individuals and us coaches, we have to definitely pay attention to these things because it's so easy for us to say, give, give, give. We're givers. That's part of what we love about the work, that we're passionate about the people that we're working with. But at the same time, it's not going to, whether you're a coach or whether you are working in corporate America or whether you're a stay-at-home mom, the reality is that it's okay to say, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. Why, for instance, what do you have to cook every single meal from scratch? Or can you, right? Maybe prep one day a week, or maybe one day it's your date night, or you make it easy and have cereal for dinner, right? Whatever it is, we have to start to think outside the box because again, it's like we got this rule book, right? From the earlier generation and said, okay, you do this, you do that, you do this. And if you don't do something that's in the book, then it starts to define you in a negative way. And nobody's sitting around grading us. And I think that's the other issue. We grade ourselves when nobody else cares what we're doing.
One of my most recent reels that I made for the Stacey AM coaching on my online, which is separate from
Mhm.
what my day job is,
Yeah.
right? But it was this catchphrase of this: I don't meal prep because I'm tracking my macros.
Mm.
I meal prep because I steal back time, because I put portions in containers that I grab and go because I'm not going to cook when I come home from dinner. I mean,
Yep.
for my dinner at each evening, I'm going to grab my lunch and go. I get my time back in my lunchtime. I'm not grabbing something on the
Yep.
go. I have it, and when I come home, I even rinse my bowl up here at the office. So when I come in, I just load it and I run
Yep.
it. saves me so much time. It saves me so much time.
Yeah.
It also saves me money,
Mm-hmm.
which allows me to actually plan. Every Wednesday night, I go out to dinner with a girlfriend and
Nice.
we have the best time laughing. And just, I mean, it is the highlight of my week.
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things that one thing begats another. And then the same way we get rolled into the overwhelm, if we're intentional
Mm-hmm.
and we do see it as part of our identity and self-care and nurturing ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
Because the irony is that I could work and work and work and just say, I used to laugh, I'll sleep when I'm dead, right? You've heard that.
Yeah, I've said that.
When somebody said to me, you can't be the best you need for the people you want to serve most, I was like, oh,
Mm.
okay, now I'm going to listen to that. That seemed much more powerful to me than about taking care of me. And then I had to learn to take care of me. It's an ongoing process, but
Yeah.
I seem to be a quick learner and I'm liking it. I really
Yeah,
am.
it's and you know what I love about this is you are experimenting, you're curious about, okay, let me see about this and seeing what works and what doesn't work. Now, here are the two questions that I would love for you to address because definitely as midlife women, right? This is probably what comes to mind. How do we reinvent ourselves after a major life change? Because you walk that road, right? And now the second part of the question is if you're going to reinvent yourself, how do you create that system for success?
Well, those both those questions kind of tie into what my program does. So suffice it to say is owning and identifying what you feel. Okay. I use the feelings wheel. In fact, one of my clients, you can see it behind
Yeah,
me,
I love
gave
the feelings wheel.
for a gift, right? What I like about it is the different tiers. And for many people, for myself, building a vocabulary about feelings. Because if I feel dismissed,
Mhm.
if I feel undermined as opposed to I feel abandoned,
Right.
I took responsibility that all of these things that happened in my life, it's my responsibility to take it. Like they did that to me. They made me feel like this, like I'm the victim and I'm lost in this vortex.
Yeah.
I had to take ownership that, you know what, at the end of the day, an event happens.
Hmm.
I had emotional response. And by identifying very specifically what is my emotional response, then
Hmm.
the question is not as what should they have done or what did I need other people to do? It was like, what do I need today? Take care of me, take care of myself, because that's the other piece of this. Too many times, community, there's a belief system that, well, I wouldn't have behaved that way if you hadn't done that first.
Yeah.
I get it. I feel that that doesn't get us anywhere in the modality of maturity, right? So if
Mm.
I have a certain feeling, what do I need to do to take care of myself? And it is my responsibility. I work with so many couples that want someone else to meet that need.
Hmm.
That's a problem because I love you just the way you are, but could
Yeah.
you just do it's incongruent.
No,
So we practice
absolutely.
in the identity. We have so many people who talk about having a relationship with ourselves. That is what identity does. So, in short, you figure out very specifically what is your emotional response to whatever outcome that you've experienced. Then you say, what do I need in this? And then you leapfrog. There's a couple of other steps in here, but you leapfrog over here to go, how do I want to show up in the world? Because anybody can be their best version of themselves when everything is going their way.
Mhm.
If you want to show up consistently, that's where
Mm.
it's core character qualities is what I call it. That identity work is identifying your core character qualities. And I say 3 to 5 of them. Some people need more, some people need less, right?
Mhm.
Me, I share mine is authenticity, transparency, integrity, and kindness. Kindness, I can be super direct with you, but I don't need to condemn you. I don't need to criticize you. I don't
Mhm.
need to be negative in any way. But I can be straight, not nice, where we avoid
Right.
conflict, but
Right.
kind, right?
Yeah. I
I'm
hate the
authentic.
word nice, by the way. It's
Me
not my
too.
favorite.
Me too. And authentic is I'm going to show up as I am, right? I don't have an agenda because I was kind of accused of that during my big thing, my big life ordeal of having an agenda, being manipulative. You know how those therapists are, right? Like,
Yeah.
so it's not the words that you choose, it's what they mean to you, right? So, and my goal was if you met me in the Kroger parking lot or if you met me in my professional life,
Hmm.
you're going to see the essence of the same woman.
Yeah.
Whether I am ticked off with whatever's happening at the grocery store or I am interacting with you in a professional manner, there should be
Mm.
character consistency.
Yeah.
So what we have to do is be responsible. What is the event that's happening? How do I feel about it? What do I need to take care of myself? Because at the end of the day, I'm going to ask myself one question. If I have to engage or respond to this life event, if I have picked these four core character qualities, how do I show up as authentic with integrity, transparency, and communicate with kindness?
Hmm.
I choose my options.
Yeah.
And from there, that's how I show up. And that's the simple version of the identity work. But it goes, I mean, it's the gamut, it's the spectrum of
Hmm.
feelings, the event, acceptance, taking ownership, not being the victim,
Hmm.
taking the initiative and building resilience, sitting in the man, this sucks, and there's no shortcut through it.
Yeah.
That's the
Oh,
big piece.
so good. Identity work, and this is one of the things that I have found for myself. And I love that you talked about you showing up in the same way, no matter where you're meeting you, right? In the boardroom, in the bedroom, in the parking lot, and anywhere in between. I think for us, character work is that it's not a one and done
Never.
because we evolve with the information, the experiences, and then also our vision for our life changes. There's going to be some very core things that remain the same. And I have to, like I look back and you're naming all these things for yourself. For me, um, service, growth, connection with others. These are things that have been important to me no matter what. And as my character changes and I work on my character, the core of it remains the same, but I do evolve and become a different person with those values, those
How
things.
it shows up, how it
Yeah.
bubbles up in you.
Hmm.
I love Brene Brown's work, right? When
Oh,
she
I
talks
love it
about
too.
the boundaries and her compassion practices,
Hmm.
even with service and all of that. I'm all about that. But when you're a people pleaser, it's the why.
Hmm. Yeah.
Am I doing something because it's bringing me joy, or am I doing something
Yeah.
because a good wife, woman, daughter, sister, auntie,
Hmm.
whatever would do that? Or if I'm doing it because this, passionate about it.
Yeah.
I can't wait to dig in.
Yeah.
And that's an internal work.
That's internal work for sure. And the things that and I've started to in the last few months, if it doesn't bring me joy, it's not for me. Because and that's what we spend so much time doing is doing the thing because it's what we're supposed to be doing. Who says? Say you. You decide what brings you joy, what you want to invest in, what are the things that make a difference for you.
And there's seasons, right? Because if we're
Absolutely.
evolving and we're coming in and out of different seasons of life,
Hmm.
there's a time and a place. It serves, I was at one point, I was working with a relationship coach. And well, I'm still working with him on some level or another. And, I was challenged to write about some regrets. And, as I went to do it, I thought, oh, I know this. I encourage journaling. I'm all about this, right? When I started to write about it, it was not at all what I thought it was going to be. It was about a
Mm.
life event. But with the work that I've done with identity, I realized it was a space in my life that was changing the corner when I didn't show up in the world the way I wanted to. And it was for my children during
Mhm.
my divorce. My children were older. And what was so important that I missed, and I've taken the last several years to be very committed to it to make that up to them, is my children were young adults. They had their own, if you will, divorce experience
Mm.
with our divorce because they had already
Yep,
moved out.
yep.
So reconciling what is truth with mom and dad was and is still a journey for them, and they're approaching their 30s. when I did not show up well in my world, I became a liability for them. So during their grieving process, now they also had me as a concern that we had role reversal.
Mhm. Mm,
I was not regulated. And
yeah.
ironically, that has been my biggest regret that I have learned and worked through. And I've let that be a cornerstone for me to just say, never again. That's why I built this program, because I thought I need to stay consistent. No matter what I am
Yes.
experiencing, I never want to be in that place again.
Yeah. And self regulation is one of these things that we don't necessarily learn in school. We don't necessarily learn in a lot of places. And yet it is the most needed skill, whether we are in the workplace or in relationships, because we then m- mirror each other. And if I'm not self regulating and I'm coming into this room all discombobulated and stressed, people are going to pick up on that. And they may not know why they're all anxious and upset or whatever. Well, it's because I didn't self-regulate myself and they themselves don't know how to self-regulate and and on and on and on. Tell me about your program and how do people participate? What are the outcomes of working with you in the program that you have?
So this is what it has evolved. It started as one thing, and I would like to, as I get older, because I am one of those, I'm not going to rush myself. Okay. The Stacey Ann is the secondary thing. The program I have is on the Stacey Ann Coaching website. Um, People can reach out to me through Stacey Ann Coaching. It is about identity. It is how to create the scaffolding. I take you step by step with 6 or 7 lessons. I think it's 7 lessons. And I do one on one with that. It can be done, you can purchase it and just have it as a standalone video, one on one. We're working through details of the different options. What I'd like to evolve this into, my first and foremost, right now, I have on Facebook what's called Navigating the Shit Show,
I love that. It's a perfect name.
closed midlife group. And I would love to cultivate this group, because ultimately, what I want this outgrowth, I want the program to grow, and it's good standalone knowledge. I'm going to do some other work, courses on boundaries. But what I really see the vision of is women coming together across the nations, having a sense of community, all wanting to focus on everything and different walks of life, married, single, never married, mothers,
Love it.
whatever you find, wherever you find yourself in this journey, to have this companionship that is often not easy to find in the world that's face to face, and see people travel together, maybe have weekends. That's where
Mhm.
it's coming. But the coming together as women in a group, this is what I would like a platform.
So
That's what
good.
I love to do.
Well, I navigating the midlife shit show. Nurture your authentic self is the Facebook group,
Yeah.
and I'm going to fill out the little information I have to fill out here to join. I'm definitely going to join because I
Thank
think that we need to surround ourselves with people who are in the same journey. A lot of times we stay stuck in places where maybe we've outgrown relationships, where we shift, right, and we feel that we need to stay in that, and yet it's not for us, and it doesn't make that person or that
you.
relationship bad. It just means that we're in different places.
That
Yeah. Amazing. Stacey Ann, again, this conversation is so fun. I love the work that you're doing, identity work. We need it in midlife. We're rewriting chapters, and I want us to rewrite our lives and rewrite the possibilities for those that are coming after us. And if we do the work today, it will be possible for other young women and men to come after us and write their own journeys, not necessarily take up somebody else's chapters and just fill in the blanks with themselves. So thank you. Again, tell us how people can find you and where do you mainly hang out? Is it Facebook? Is it Instagram?
I hang out a lot more on Instagram. I do have my Facebook page, but I do a lot of reels. I do a lot of content that I share on Instagram. And so drop me a DM. Stacey and Coaching, I have an email through that. So it
Oh,
is an easy way for you to have access to me.
well, I love the work that you're doing. You're growing, anything that we can do to support you. And thank you for being part of the Confident You family and for helping us navigate our journey to confidence here at Casa de Confidence. Will you come back again?
I would love to come back again.
Amazing.
Thank you for having me.
Well, amazing. Thanks again, everybody. Make sure you connect. And don't forget, until next time, go confidently in the direction of your dreams. Hi, everybody. I know that sometimes we get very lonely in this entrepreneur journey, and I want to invite you to join us into our limited time only Purposeful You Mastermind. For many of us entrepreneurs, we believe that we can do it all. But the reality is that doing it alone only creates a lot of overwhelm. So join us at the Purposeful You Mastermind. You can find out more information by going to bit.ly/Julie's Mastermind. This is going to be the place where you are able to then unlock your full potential and achieve long-term success for your business. Push you behind your current limits, expand your connections, discover new ideas, and implement them with confidence. You're going to get the support in all aspects and transforming you to the six-figure business you've been looking for. Pause and get off the hamster wheel if you've been spinning around. This is a time where you can get that support from like-minded entrepreneurs that are here to join you in your journey. Together, we can challenge the assumptions and land the speaking engagements and opportunities we want to grow our business and make an impact in the lives of people. See you then. Remember, you can find the mastermind at bit.ly, Julie's Mastermind.